Hello. I have completed my recommended operating budget for the City of Newport News for the fiscal year that begins on July 1st, 2012. Over the next few weeks, with your input, our City Council will review my recommendations, and together we will make any appropriate adjustments, ultimately with an approved operating budget acted on in May of this year. What I wanted to share with you initially about this recommendation, or sort of the basic attributes of this budget and what it means for citizens, employees, and the city organization. To give you perspective, when we first sat down and considered what the budget would have to look like for the year beginning in July, we were faced with some pretty obvious trends that we were going to have to deal with. On the revenue side, because of declining residential property values, we're basically looking at about a $7 million reduction in city revenue from real estate. That's pretty major, and it's our largest source of revenue. Our second largest source of revenue is state funding, and once again for next year it's projected to be down, although at least the rate of decline in state revenue is slowing and maybe stabilizing. We also have some fixed expenditures and some structural issues that we knew we would have to deal with. The reformed pension system, with the reforms that we did in March of 2010, require significant additional investments by the city to meet our commitments made in decades past to retired city employees. We also have increases in health insurance, as most employers do, to provide for our workforce, increases in energy and particularly gasoline costs, as well as a strong desire to do a little something for our schools, given the fact that they've experienced almost $40 million of state cuts over the last 3 years. So when you sit down and start looking at a budget and you have those combination of expenses that you know you're going to have to make and those revenues that you know are declining, clearly you're in for a difficult process. That was no surprise. What I have recommended to City Council, with the great support of the budget staff and all of the city staff, is a budget that is balanced, not only balanced in terms of arithmetic, but I believe balanced in terms of philosophy, approach, dealing with all the different tugs and pulls that we face as a community and as a city organization. Let me just tell you a little bit about the rates and fees, the impact on services, and the impact on employees. I'm proud to say that I have not recommended any increase in the real estate tax for next year. With declining values, while nobody that owns a house is happy about that, certainly the good news is many of you will have a meaningful reduction in your real estate taxes for next year. Rather than recommending an increase in real estate taxes, I've recommended some other tax increases. Specifically, I'm recommending a 1 cent increase in the meals tax, a 25-cent increase in the personal property tax, and a 10-cent per pack increase in the cigarette tax. When you take all those three tax increases in combination, along with the general trend in the economy, that comes close to making up for just the decline in real estate taxes that we're experiencing for next year. Also, on the revenue side, we found it necessary to recommend fee increases. As has been publicized, our stormwater fee and our wastewater fee is going to have to go up once again, and will continue to into the foreseeable future, largely driven by state and federal environmental regulations. Our water fee will also go up. While that is related to environmental regulations, it's fundamentally driven by a change in demand for water. We're all consuming less water, which is a good thing. But if you took an average household and you added up the various taxes and fees that this budget recommends increasing, and you compared it to the savings as a result of assessments going down, most citizens that own a property in Newport News will have a net decrease in overall fees and taxes paid to the city of Newport News. And when you consider some of the challenges we're facing as a community, I'm proud that we've been able to achieve a recommended budget that has that characteristic. On the expenditure side, our investments are focused in several areas. As I mentioned right as I began this presentation, we are making a small additional contribution to the school system of $1.2 million. We're in the fourth year of an 8-year plan to restore the full financial health of our pension system, and that will require an approximately $6 million increase to the pension fund. About $1.8 million will have to go to support health care for employees, and this is in addition to the cost that our employees will pay, which is also anticipated to go up in January. Beyond those things, we understand that fuel prices will have to be budgeted for appropriately. When you think about what the city does, most of our activities, particularly public safety and public works and public utilities, all require the use of vehicles, and so when gasoline is higher, that's a major driver on the expenditure side. We do recommend in this budget a 1.5% increase in compensation for employees that would take effect in January. So in other words, a half a year increase of 1.5%. That is very modest. I wanted to do more than that. Next January, employees will have an increase in their health care. So it was our thought that this would at least allow for the increased cost of health care to be covered for most employees in their paycheck. I would point out that in the private sector, the major employers in this region are budgeting for compensation increases for their employees, and I don't apologize for recommending an increase for our excellent workforce. And I remind folks that balancing a budget is just not what we do in terms of arithmetic for the next few months, but it's making sure we have the kind of organization that can support the services this city expects in the years going forward. I guess what is most important for citizens to understand about this recommended budget is we've managed to propose a budget that sustains most of the services that you expect. And our fee and tax structure is such that for many people, the increases will be balanced out by decreases due to declining residential real estate values. I feel very good about being able to sustain most of the important services of city government. And in particular, even though we've been through a very significant recession and a difficult financial position, very proud of the fact that we have more authorized positions in the Newport News Police Department, in the Newport News Fire Department, in next year's budget than we have ever had in the history of the city of Newport News, despite all of these other difficulties. Now I want to talk about some of the cuts and some of the innovations and some of the things that will be different in the operating budget that we propose for next year. One of the things I think is very exciting and innovative is an initiative that we are undertaking with the City of Hampton to share fire and paramedic services along our lengthy mutual border. Due to the good work and cooperation of our respective fire departments, we are in the process of creating a structure where the fire stations along our common borders will be able to respond to citizens in either community based on what unit is most readily available to provide service. If you're thinking about it, each community has 3 fire stations whose natural response area is partly within the other community. Because of arbitrary political boundaries, we only respond to our border and Hampton only responds to their border unless there's some kind of emergency. We have come up with the system, which this budget reflects, where both cities can respond within the natural response zones outside of their boundary. And once we figure out the details of this, this will allow the City of Newport News to save perhaps as much as $700,000 annually while simultaneously improving fire and paramedic service. Of course, Hampton will have a similar savings on their side. We've also, in this operating budget, continued to make the investments in some of our strategic priorities as Council has directed. Of course, the new Denby Community Center will open early in the next fiscal year, and the total operating cost for that facility is approximately $700,000 a year. This is a signature facility that all the citizens of Newport News, and particularly those of Denby, will be proud of, and it will be an icon as we continue to improve the Upper Warwick Boulevard corridor. Just as importantly, related to our customer service priority, we are opening our 311 center approximately halfway through the fiscal year. This facility, which will be located in the city-owned public health facility, will allow citizens to call a single 311 number or email a single address to report issues, make inquiries, and we will have a comprehensive ability to track and report issues for citizens. And this is a very exciting initiative, and the full operational cost for that in next year's budget is approximately $350,000. We have continued to make cuts. I've mentioned some of the things that we're spending more money on, either by conscious policy decision or because of legal, regulatory, or structural requirements. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that we have not continued to comb the budget for reductions. Over the last several years, including this year, we have found it necessary to reduce positions. I have to report that in this particular budget, there is a net reduction of 11 positions, and these are people in positions. This will be a reduction in force. This is never easy to recommend, but there are some cases where the position is no longer justified given changing technology or patterns of usage. So for the fourth year in a row, there will be a reduction in force. Hopefully many of these employees will have an opportunity to get a job elsewhere in the city, as is our policy whenever possible. We've also looked at other ways to reduce spending, and many departments, their budgets have actually declined in dollar terms next year as compared to this year. Accounts, including things such as training, such as travel, continue to be squeezed. But again, we have looked at those things from a long-term perspective. It makes no sense to balance the budget for next year and create a situation where our organization does not have the knowledgeable and expert people to do all the different jobs that you expect us to do. Much of our savings over the last several years has come from personnel costs. We continue to have a partial hiring freeze, with the exception being public safety positions. We have eliminated over 200 positions in the last 3 years. Our overall workforce, taking into account a few new positions that have been created, is down by approximately 5% since fiscal year 2009. So I feel like we have made the cuts that we can make without very significant reductions in service. This budget does not close facilities, reduce operating hours, diminish our public works operations. It does continue to put pressure on long-term investments, and we'll need to rectify this going forward. For example, our investments in technology, street repaving, things of that nature, vehicle replacement are really below the sustainable level, and this cannot continue indefinitely. but I've made the recommendation to continue to use those strategies for another year in the hopes that by next year our residential real estate situation will be improving and the overall economy will be such that some of those types of expenditures can be restored to responsible long-term levels. In the final analysis, the budget that I've recommended to City Council I think strikes an appropriate balance. There are tax and fee increases that we've carefully considered, but for the most part, they're counterbalanced by declines in real estate taxes that citizens will have to pay. The revenues that we have recommended to be increased are really necessary if we're going to continue to provide the services that you expect. It was my judgment that you do expect those services. So what I mean when I say that is we're not closing facilities, we're not reducing hours, we're not further altering how we pick up the trash or things of that nature. And to keep the services at the level that we have require both another year of disciplined, cutting, innovative, creative things, including in some cases shared services, but also some tax and fee increases. Again, some driven to simply support the services you expect, and in some cases with fees to pay for the federal and state environmental regulations that we all understand we're facing. So it's a big budget, it's a complicated budget. There are many details that I'm obviously not discussing in these brief remarks. The budget transmittal memorandum that I've sent to Council, as well as the actual budget document, will shortly be posted on the city's website. It's very important to the City Council, as well as myself and the budget staff, that we hear from citizens that have constructive ideas about how this budget should perhaps be modified. And should you have such suggestions or have questions or comments, the screen shows some of the different ways you can get in touch with us. Of course, we will have the traditional budget public hearings, and it is my hope that we will come to closure and develop a community consensus on an acceptable operating budget in early May of this year. It is my hope and belief that the budget that I've recommended will largely form the basis for a constructive outcome to that budget process. Thank you very much.